Welcome, everyone, to the Collaborative Mentoring Webinar Series, and thank you for joining us. I'm Cheryl Howard-Neal from Mentor, Illinois, and I'll be facilitating today's conversation on family engagement as a strategy to strengthening mentoring relationships. I also wanted to remind everyone that April is National Child Abuse Prevention Month. For resources and information on child abuse prevention, protecting children from risk of abuse, and strengthening families, please visit www.childwelfare.org, which is also in your chat box, I believe. Let's get started. This webinar is part of the Collaborative Mentoring Webinar Series, which is funded by the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention through the National Mentoring Resource Center and facilitated in partnership with Mentor, the National Mentoring Partnership. These webinars would not be possible without the planning team, which includes the mentoring partnerships shown on this slide. In addition to this webinar series, the National Mentoring Resource Center provides resources for mentoring practitioners. At the end of this webinar, we'll provide more details about how you can access this free support. A bit of housekeeping. Before we get started, wanted to let you know that in 1 week, you'll receive an email with information about how to download a copy of these slides and view the webinar recording. You can also access this information directly by going to Mentor's website in the next week. And to continually improve this series, we're looking for your input. A short survey will pop up as you exit the webinar. Please take just 3 minutes to give us your feedback. We also want this to be a participatory experience. So from Mentor Colorado, want this to be a participatory experience. So please use the question box to answer questions throughout the webinar. Audrey Cruz from Mentor Colorado will be queuing up questions to share with panelists during the Q&A portion of the webinar. We may not get to all the questions because there are several hundred of you on the webinar, but we will do our very best. The questions that we share with our panelists are generally ones that broaden or deepen our conversation. But first, let's get a sense of who we have with us today. And we have 2 short polls for you. The first poll, what is your experience level in the mentoring field? Beginner, experienced, or expert? And we'll take just a second or 2 for you to respond. Okay, we have our results. So beginner, about 35%, experienced, about 54%, and then some experts at 11%. So a pretty good cross-section, leaning a bit towards experienced practitioners. So that's awesome. And one more poll question for you. What is your role in the mentoring field? Are you a practitioner, a researcher, maybe a TA provider, a funder, or something else? And if you are other, we would love to hear what that other might be in the chat box. Please let us know. Maybe you're a mentor, maybe you're a family member or caregiver. And we'll take a minute just to get your response. Okay, so practitioner, we're way heavy on practitioners, about 60%. Researchers, 3%. TA providers, 9%. Funder, 3%, and 25% other. So as we mentioned in the chat box, make sure you list what the other might be. But we're pretty heavy practitioner, which is great. Thank you. So we are pleased to have all of you, and we hope that today's information will be applicable to everyone on the line. So let's take a look at our webinar goals for today. So we have 3 overarching goals. One is to recognize the importance family engagement has on youth and mentoring relationships. Two is that we want to understand some of the barriers and misconceptions to caregiver and family engagement. Why don't parents and caregivers and families participate in our programs? And then three, learn effective strategies on how to engage caregivers and family in helping to support youth in mentoring relationships. A little bit about us on the line here, the panelists. Me, I am Cheryl Howard-Neal. I am with Mentor Illinois. We are based out of Chicago. Cheryl comes to Mentor Illinois with more than 20 years of service in the nonprofit sector, working with mentoring programs, volunteers, and youth. As Director of Programs and Partnerships, Cheryl facilitates trainings and workshops, helps disseminate information about program best practices, meets with organizations to review their policies and procedures, and assist them in creating work plans to strengthen their programming. Prior to Mentor Illinois, Cheryl worked at Big Brothers Big Sisters of Metropolitan Chicago for 5 years, holding various positions, including Director of Community-Based Programs and Program Support Specialist. Our second panelist, Rosa Julia Garcia Rivera from Gads Hill Center. Rosa Julia is an Illinois State licensed clinical professional therapist with over 20 years of culturally competent clinical experience in the mental health services field. She has worked as a mental health consultant since 2002 and was the owner and operator of Rivera Mental Health Consultants. Rosa Julia utilized her extensive experience in creating and implementing successful organization models to accommodate different developmental, cultural, and diverse populations. And in 2014, became the Director of Mental Health, Youth, and Community Initiatives at Gads Hill Center. In this role, she has built thriving departments, providing clinical, youth, and community health services to the south and west sides of Chicago. Coretta J. Pruitt, also known as CJ, is from Metropolitan Family Services. CJ is a family advocate and resource developer with Metropolitan Family Services. She works in the Child and Family Wellness Program, known as H3, Healthy Minds, Healthy Children, Healthy Chicago. The H3 program provides care that supports children's physical, emotional, and mental health during their well child visits. CJ has a heart for learning and lives with the philosophy that every day you learn something new. As such, in addition to her Bachelor of Science degree in computer technology from Purdue University, she also has a license from the state of Illinois in both real estate and life insurance. CJ is also the proud mom of 6. So why do families matter? And this is definitely a redundant question, I feel, or rhetorical question, if you will. I think that most of us on the line recognize the importance of families and why families have to be an integral part of our mentoring programs. So families matter. They are the primary source of development for youth. So much of what youth hear, learn, and believe is tied to their families. And in mentoring relationships, families often serve as the intermediary between the mentee and the mentor and can have significant influence and control in determining the activities their young person engages in and their access to other adults. For youth to thrive in mentoring relationships, it is so important for mentors and families to understand and support the relationship. When you have informed, empowered families, plus engaged and enlightened mentors, you have a strong match relationship, which is what our youth truly need. So families as assets. They're assets and partners in our program. So how are families important to growing mentoring relationships? What do they bring to the table? Families help build our youth. Usually the first influencers in a young person's life are who? Their caregivers and families. Family relationships are the first relationships that youth enter into, long before they meet mentors. Families can provide consistency, historical context, and help youth to level set, which are all attributes that can help mentoring relationships to flourish. Mentoring is a great strategy to help support and encourage and provide exposure to youth, but the foundational elements, such as learning to care about other people and feeling included in something and understanding the cultural norms and values they have, often starts at home with their families. So what are some of the ways that families support and encourage youth, which helps us set the stage for strong match relationships? One way is in values. So youth develop attitudes, norms, and learn to assign value to things like work and school, other people, and themselves. How they see themselves in the world, how they see themselves in relationships often starts at home with the families. Traditions and culture. Youth learn about holidays, rituals, and celebrations as part of family life. So how they celebrate Christmas, if they celebrate Kwanzaa, the things that they do as a family, the things that are learned and passed down. And those are things that they can share with mentors once they're in mentoring relationships. And in turn, mentors can share their traditions and their values and their norms with young people. Adaptability. The family learns to adapt when faced with changes. So many of our young people, they figure out how to navigate life and school life and all of that because of what they learn at home. When there are challenges in the home or changes that occur, often they look to family members to see how they deal with that, and then they mirror that. So often the adaptability factor kind of starts at home for our young people. Affection. You've learned to show warmth towards other people, and just learn how to build connection, spending time with people, how to care about other people, how to show empathy and sympathy towards other people. So much of that starts in the home and with their families. Emotional openness, where you feel comfortable and can be themselves around family, which is what we hope they will do with mentors, that they can feel they can be their authentic selves, and that they can be with mentors and kind of really show themselves. But they learn that at home, because at home they're able to be around family and be around people that they know and that care about them. And we hope that what they learn there will transition over to the time they spend with mentors and the relationships and conversations that they're able to have with mentors. Problem solving, you've learned resilience and see family members work together to solve problems and deal with issues. Again, much of how young people kind of see the world and see challenges and barriers and struggle with things that might happen, so much of that starts at what they see at home with their family members and what they're taught about what it means to work together and solve conflicts and overcome things. So much of that starts there. Mentors can definitely add to this and give, their perspective and their philosophy on this. But so much of where kids begin starts in the home with this kind of mindset. Shared activities. Families regularly spend time doing everyday activities together. This is like chores, for instance, like housework at home, where young people learn how to do the laundry. That might be where they learn to do some of that. Going to a gas station and pumping gas, learning to do that. Maybe that's their first entree into doing just basic everyday activities. And again, mentors can certainly add to that and share different things with young people, but kind of that foundational level, again, it's going to start with the families. Their ability to discuss difficult topics. So family members openly discuss sensitive issues, such as sex or religion or financial issues. So mentors can get a really good glimpse into where young people are at based on what their family says about religion, what their family says about sex and sexual relationships. We take our cues as mentors from the family. And mentors can certainly uphold that and support what is learned in the family. But that's where it kind of begins. So if that's what families are bringing to the table, which is substantial, they're definitely a win to having families involved in our program and understanding more about our families and what they pour into the young people. We know that. But what are some reasons why families don't engage with mentoring relationships and in our programs? What are some of the barriers? If the end game is to effectively prepare all youth to live productive and fulfilling lives, then we need all hands on deck, right? Families, teachers, mentors, and the community. But unfortunately, we often forget and ignore the families that our youth belong to, believing that they are apathetic or far too removed from what is actually happening with their youth. These are preconceived notions that we have as often program providers. It is often easier to classify caregivers and families as having too many challenges and deficits, while never really taking the time to uncover the strength and value that they possess. So why don't caregivers and families engage? What are some of the barriers? One is feeling like an outsider. Many families and caregivers, they feel like they don't have a place in the mentoring relationship, that's just something that the young person's involved in. That doesn't have anything to do with me. That's just for my kid. And they don't feel like that they can come to a mentor and say, hey, this is what's going on, or come to us as program providers and say, hey, this is what I need you to know about my child. They just feel like they're on the outside looking in, which is a hard place to be. Sometimes they're uncomfortable or embarrassed for even wanting to help. Why do I need a mentor for my child? If I need a mentor for my child, that means that I'm doing something wrong, that I'm not fulfilling all their needs, that I'm at a deficit because I'm even enrolling my child in a mentoring program. So just uncomfortable and embarrassed with needing that kind of support. Sometimes not being able to provide what the mentor provides. So if the mentor is able to take my child to a museum or take them to the movies or do something that I can't provide to them, I feel less than as a parent or family member. It's like I can't even do these things for my child, but the mentor can. So just feel feelings of less than. It might be a cultural or language barrier. Maybe I'm having trouble communicating with the mentor or even the program provider. My language is different, what I value is different, and there's just no connection. That might be a barrier. Maybe as simple as I don't have transportation or childcare to attend the events that you have. If you have something, on a Tuesday evening at 5 o'clock, well, I don't get off work until 6 o'clock. And when I get off at 6 o'clock, I might not have transportation to make it to the meeting that you're having. I'm interested in what you're providing. I'm interested in the mentoring relationship, but I just have no logistics-wise. I just have no way to get there. And sometimes siblings or other youth feel left out. So if I have 3 kids and one child is in the program, but the other 2 are not, they might feel left out. They might not feel like they have a place in the program. They might not feel like the one child that is having a mentor, they're getting to do all this really, cool stuff and participate and do all these things that the other kiddos cannot. That's a barrier because I don't want that for my children either. So it's not as simple as families not wanting to engage with us. I think it goes far deeper than that. There's a reason why. And as program providers, we have to get at what the why is and then work around what the why is so that we can make it comfortable, we can make it accessible so that we can invite caregivers and families into our program. Because as we just saw, once we have them on board, once they're a part of the fold, it's a richer, more robust match relationship, which is what we want. So what do? Now that we know some of the reasons or barriers caregivers and families have for not engaging in matched relationships or in our programs, what can we do as providers? How can we better align to meet the needs of our families? And just as we woo our mentors, we have to do the same for our families and our caregivers. So 1, communicate clearly, making sure that you're outlining expectations. The one thing as program providers that we always need to do is kind of manage and outline what the expectations are. If parents and caregivers, families, if they come to us and if their expectation is that their kiddos are going to do better in school, that this program is an academic program, mentors are going to meet with kids, are going to meet with my child, and they're going to work on academics, and that's all they're going to do. If that's not an expectation of your program, that should be stated. It's like, yes, there's academics, but there's also a social piece to it. There's also an exposure piece to it. So whatever your program expectations are, that should be spelled out clearly to the families and caregivers. We want to explain everyone's role in a match. So everyone has a role. We talked about having all hands on deck. So just as the mentor has a role, both the young person and the family, everyone has a role. And program providers, we all have a role in the match. And making sure that families are clear about what the different roles are. We want to answer questions and seek feedback. And I know answering questions, that can be easy, but getting feedback might not be. It's tough to hear feedback about our programs, especially if the feedback isn't all that positive. But that's okay. The feedback that we get can be both, people say it's a blessing and a curse, right? It's a blessing because you're able to take the feedback and really look at it and see if it's something that you can apply to your program to make it stronger, to make it more effective. So seeking that feedback from families and caregivers, so important. Our next big bucket there is communicate in different ways. So having family orientation sessions and open houses. Oftentimes, as program providers, we'll have what? One family orientation session, right? Maybe one open house at the beginning of the program, just to enroll families and do intake, and then we never have anything else. I would encourage you to have multiple opportunities for families to come and meet each other and to meet program staff. You can invite mentors to that. And it's really an opportunity, right? It's always an opportunity to get people together to start to break down the walls because we want families to engage. So I would encourage you to have multiple sessions, different days, different hours, maybe have childcare, always have food. Make it family friendly. We also want to have program handbooks and event calendars. So even though we're having the conversations and we're talking about, all the great things the program provides and that it does, we also want to be able to give this to people tangibly, hand them a handbook so they can reference back. Give them an event calendar so they can see what's coming up. Like, next month there's going to be an open house. Let's make sure we attend that so they can plan, because planning is part of it. If you know you need childcare, you can start to plan in advance. If you know you need transportation, maybe you can plan in advance. If you need to take the day off or the morning off, maybe you can do that. But if they don't have all these things in hand that they can reference, then they won't have an opportunity to plan. Providing text, email, social media, having a website where you can put information. Our families and caregivers are increasingly tech savvy and social media savvy. So a lot of times the information that they get is there. They prefer to receive a text. Don't call me, but you can text me, or you can shoot me an email, or maybe put something on Facebook, have a Facebook group where they can kind of go into the group and see what's going on and what events are coming up and what information that they might need. Apps like GroupMe is a great example, or Remind, things like that are simple, that are plugged into people's phones and they can just kind of look at it and see what's going on, just to remind people to stay engaged, to stay connected with the work we're doing. And then the third big bucket is to help build the relationship. So formally introduce the mentor to the family. Something as simple as that. Make the formal introduction. mentor A, this is kid A. This is the family. This is mom, dad, grandma, aunt. Introduce the family. And then that way it's not left to chance. If you're able to say, this is the mentor, this is where mentor works, this is why mentor is interested in being in the program, then the family can feel more comfortable. They can feel like they actually know something about the person. The mentor can learn more about the family, kind of who's involved. It just makes it more formal. They all know you. You're the program provider. So all roads lead back to you, but you have to build roads between them, between mentors and families. That's our role. Then making sure that all the parties have contact information. So making sure that we have cell phone numbers for folks, or we have home numbers for people, that we have email addresses, that everyone knows how to contact everyone else. So if mentor is calling a parent or caregiver, and the parent or caregiver, they don't recognize that number, so they don't answer the phone, or they're getting a text and they're not sure who this person is texting them, making sure that the contact information is shared and everybody is clear, and it's, contact information is saved in people's phones, and so when they see it, the name pops up. Something as simple as that can really aid in creating really tangible, strong relationships right from the jump. And again, all these things should happen early on. This shouldn't be 3 months, 4 months, 6 months in. All these things should be happening fairly early on so that you're off to a good start. And then once they're batched up, coach and encourage the communication. So check in and see. So when you're doing match support with families, and you're doing match support with mentors, just making it a regular point to touch on. Hey, have you talked to mom this month? Hey, have you talked to grandma? It's like, hey, mom or grandma, have you talked to Mary, the mentor? Just making sure that you're encouraging, that they reach out to each other. Again, you're the bridge. All roads lead to you as a program provider, but building the bridges between the families and the mentor. So you're going to have to urge it along, right? You got to kind of urge, and encourage and coach and teach them what to say sometimes. Sometimes we have to coach around what the verbiage is, and what to say when they get them on the phone. So it's not uncomfortable. So it's not awkward. We have to do some of that too. Is it more work for program providers? Absolutely. But that's what's going to make the match successful ultimately, if we put in the legwork, if we're helping the relationships to flourish. This is what it looks like. Okay, so we have hit our first Q&A break. We're going to have another in a bit, but we'd love to see if we have any questions. Audrey, anything good?
Hi, Cheryl, we do. So we have a question from one of our participants asking, what if the youth is homeless or in foster care? Would they need to establish a relationship with the person or people closest to them? How would a program kind of go about creating that familial relationship in one of these more challenging circumstances?
I love that. That is a great question. And we see that as program providers, we definitely see that, where we have homeless youth in our programs, or in foster care, or in residential facilities. So to your point, yes, I would find out who is closest to that young person. Who do they value? If that's an older sibling or a cousin, or even a close friend, right? I would figure out who is closest to that person. Who do they see as family, if you will? It might not be, the biological families that we often think of and extended families. It might not look like that. It might look differently. I would try and get at who the young person sees as family. And then I would build a relationship with that person, reach out to that person. Great question.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cheryl. So I've got a bunch of questions coming in. So I'm going to give you the next one and we'll see how many we can get to. So for school-based programs that maybe aren't interfacing with families quite as regularly, are there any best practices that you could share about how we can involve parents without overstepping boundaries?
Definitely. So even with school-based and like site-based programs, or even maybe a group-based program, I would still offer it up. Now, school-based programs are a little bit different. A lot of times the interactions happen at the school, sometimes during the school day, which is really difficult for parents and guardians to kind of sneak away from work and their obligations to come to the meetings. But I would try and set something up. Now maybe even though your program operates at a school during school hours, I would try to set something up outside of school hours, just so that parents, guardians, families have a chance to at least meet the mentor, right? And start that kind of dialogue. Maybe once they meet in person, maybe that can continue via text or email or a phone call once in a while. But even though it's school or site-based, I would still want to form some type of connection. If it can't be at school, think about after hours or a Saturday morning. Some way of getting people together so they can all meet and recognize, that this relationship is substantial and it's meaningful, and that all the parties get a chance to kind of lay eyes on each other and talk about what's important for the young person. So I would still try and get them together.
Excellent. Do we have time for another question?
I think so.
Okay. So this is a question about families who might be hesitant to participate or engage. So what if a family isn't super interested in engaging, or even to the extent of maybe they don't want to have people in their home? How do we navigate those situations?
I think I would try and get at why that is. From the family, having an honest, open conversation about why that is. If they don't want the mentor coming to their home, and that's okay. I mean, it's their home. They have every right to say, I'm not comfortable with that. I don't think that's a good idea. Then maybe we can meet elsewhere. Let's meet at the local fast food place. Let's meet at the church. Let's meet at the school. But I think it starts with having a really open, honest dialogue with the family about why they don't want to be involved. And hopefully they will give you the honest reason why that is. It's like, we're not comfortable, we're not happy with our home. I mean, I've had families that would not allow me to come into their house, but we could sit on their porch and kind of on their front porch and talk about what's going on and what the issues are, because they didn't feel comfortable with me actually coming into their home, but they were fine with me sitting on the front porch. So maybe it's just getting at what the barriers are, what are the reasons behind it, and then figuring out what the workarounds are. Because at the end of the day, I think we all would agree that families want their kids to be successful, right? And if having a mentor is going to mean that child is more successful, I think families are on board with that. I really think so. And we just got to figure out what the barriers are to that engagement.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Cheryl. I have a bunch more questions that we can wait until the next Q&A section to dive into.
That would be perfect. Thank you, Audrey. And thank you for the great questions. This is awesome. What a good group. So we're
Such a good group.
So next up, we're going to hear from Gads Hill Center and Rosa. Rosa is going to tell us more about Gads Hill Center and the programs and services that they offer and what their lens is for family and caregiver engagement. Rosa, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. Good afternoon, everybody. Again, this is Rosa. I am the Director of Mental Health, Youth Services, and Community Initiatives here at Gads Hill Center. Gads Hill Center is a social service organization that has been around for over 121 years. We were one of the first settlement houses to open after the progressive era of social work in the late 1800s. Over the years, Gads Hill Center has provided a variety of different social service to communities, to strengthen communities, and we currently focus on four main areas. The first one is early childhood education. We empower parents to be their children's first teachers. We do this in two different ways. We have center-based services which we provide in 8 different communities here in Chicago in the South and Southwest sides. And we also provide home visiting services, and that's more for our isolated population in the Brighton Park area. The next area of focus is youth services. We provide out-of-school programs for youth ages 5 through 13 years old. That is a STEM focused with mentoring and wrapped in mental wellness. And then we provide college preparatory and STEM focused enrichment for teenagers ages 12 to 18 years old. The next bucket of services is our mental health services. We do that in 2 ways. We provide mental health services for Chicago Public Schools, working with what is known as Tier 3 students. Those are students who are struggling with academic, psychosocial stressors, and mental health issues. And then I lead a team of clinicians that provide comprehensive services to children and families, infant through 5 years of age. And then our final bucket is our comprehensive family support and community services, where we connect children and families to resources to meet their educational or job or health-related goals. One of our exciting initiatives through that is Healthy Moves, where we build the capacity of community members in the areas of health, mental wellness, and civic engagement, and then provide them with employment opportunities to go out into their communities to be health promoters and build the capacity of our communities in those 3 areas. The next slide is our social impact slide. I like to look at the services that we provide through Gads Hill through our impact and not just through our service delivery. I'm just going to highlight a few areas here. One of the areas that I'm really proud of is our Building Leaders program. That is our program for youth ages 12 to 18 years of age. It has been for over 15 years that we have 100% of our Building Leaders participants graduate from high school and get accepted to college. And up until now, all of those youth have been first-generation students. Another area that I'm proud of all of these, but another area that I highlight is our capacity building initiative. We really work hard to build up the capacity in our communities, and this year alone, we've seen over 4,500 community members attend our workshops on a variety of issues related to family unity, attachment, mental wellness, and a variety of other topics. And then finally, I'll point out how many students have received comprehensive mental health services through our Healthy Minds, Healthy Schools initiative. And we've reached over 1,000 Chicago Public School students. Again, these are students who are Tier 3, and we've seen over 750 students in the last year see progress, definitely in the area of emotional wellness, but also in the area of grades and attendance and attachment to school. Our mission and vision is very simple. We believe that we are trying to create opportunities for children and their families to build a better life through education, access to resources, and community engagement. And we work to accomplish that vision that all individuals, regardless of where they start, that they can and will achieve their full potential. I'll jump into our parent engagement model. Realizing that we are a child and youth organization, we really focused on what research suggested were factors that increased impact of our services. And all research and best practice pointed to family and parent engagement as critical to building positive relationships with children and youth. When I talk about parent engagement and family engagement, I use that terminology very broadly. Somebody asked a question about children in foster care or in the system. And for us, we define that parent and family engagement as the systems of support that surround the child. That could be grandparents, uncles, aunts, friends of family, definitely residential home care providers. So just as I use that terminology, parent and family engagement, know that here at Gads Hill Center, we define that with a very broad stroke. After understanding that we needed to integrate parent and family engagement throughout all of our programs, we really thought about what that looked like on an organizational and strategic level. And so parent engagement is a part of our theory of change. It's woven into all the logic models of all the programs that we have. We have 10 different distinct programs. And parent engagement is integrated differently within each of those programs. Being able to have it in our logic models really allowed us to increase accountability and think strategically about what parent engagement looked like within each of our programs. It allowed us to measure not just the frequency of our engagement, but its impact on the goals that we had for each of our students. We then sat and discussed what systemic and environmental factors contributed to a disconnect in engagement with our families, and really thought about it through a racial equity lens and began to address the barriers that affected the engagement with our families. Examples of this are when we hosted events for our parents, that we provided child care services for younger siblings, that we opened our doors later so that 100% of our parents are below the poverty level, 99% of our parents are working families. And so really keeping that in mind when we think about the times that we host these events, making sure that we have weekend opportunities and and evening opportunities for our families to be able to engage. If we were going to see them in the evening, that we had dinner available for them. And we do that now in the form of potluck, and I'll talk a little bit about that when I talk about celebration. And then finally, the content, really making sure that when we engaged our parents, that we gave them something that felt worth their while, that felt worth their time, and coming into the center and engaging in these opportunities. We really thought about the cultural lens and the services that we provide, and making sure that we are asking our community members, our parents, what engagement opportunities look like for them, and what were they looking for from us so that we could engage them. We work in over 9 different communities. We are an organization that services 60% Latinx families and 40% African American families, again, across 9 communities in Chicago. So it's important for us to really look at using a cultural lens to understand our services, as each one of those communities are very different, especially around family engagement. So making sure, again, that we had their voice. The last bullet point on this slide is around building relationships. I can't stress that enough. Mentoring is absolutely about engaging and building relationships, but that also goes with the systems that surround our students. Getting involved in understanding their family, their school, and absolutely the community in which they come from. I can't stress that enough. Relationships are key to what we do. In the next slide, talk a little bit more about some of the other things that we provide. The one thing that we do is really try to have a space for our families that feels safe and inclusive. We do that very strategically and make sure that each time a family member comes into our facility or that we enter their home, that we are making sure that they feel welcomed, empowered, informed, and engaged. And so with every opportunity that we get to sit with our parents, again, those are the 4 things that we're looking for, that they feel welcomed, empowered, informed, and engaged in our process. Staff onboarding and training is so critical, and really giving our mentors and our staff, from our receptionists to our kitchen staff, all of our youth workers and mentors, tools and techniques on family engagement. I think for some people it can come more naturally. For others, there's some really great best practices and tools out there to really teach our staff about engagement of families and understanding the barriers that affect that connection. Teaching our staff the importance of endurance. A lot of our families need a lot of supports in different ways. And so getting our staff to understand that 1 phone call may not be enough, that 3 phone calls may not be enough, that you may need to do a home visit, send a few letters, make sure that you're making time, wait for the parent as they're picking up their child from the center, but not giving up and not giving up hope. Really understanding that our families face a lot of different issues, and it is important and necessary that we go that extra mile to engage our families, and that we're really working towards breaking any resistance in that relationship and not personalizing that. I think that's another key area for our staff, is making sure that they understand to not personalize if there is resistance with our families. The other part that I want to talk about is our whole family approach. When thinking about when we provide an intake for our families, really trying to understand the needs of the whole family. I think we do a great job as mentors, as understanding the needs of our mentees, but it's really important to take into account what the family needs. And a lot of our organizations or a lot of individual mentors don't have the resources to provide our families with all the services, but having being able to point them to 311, being able to provide a packet of resources that include everything from food pantries to health-related services is important. And so understanding what our families need and be able to provide those resources for our family. We utilize evidence-based curriculums. We really try to not reinvent the wheel. There's some great parent engagement curriculums out there. These are some examples of the ones that we use. We try to complement our curriculum when working with our students. If we're working with our students on STEM, we have a complementary curriculum for our parents so that they're not intimidated by the concepts that we're teaching their students. Around SEL learning, social emotional learning, we're providing our parents with those resources, the vocabulary, and the information so that they can engage their children in that process of learning. And then finally, celebration. It is last on my list here, but absolutely critical when thinking about working with families and mentoring relationships, is taking the time to understand the importance of celebration, going back to culture, understanding how our families celebrate, what that looks like, and being a part of that process can really help foster a deeper relationship with our families and help build systems of support for our families. It allows them to engage with each other and help build those systems and community supports that our families need to thrive. And that's the end of my slides, and I hope that everybody found some of that information useful. Thank you so much, Cheryl, for letting me share today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Rosa. That was amazing. Now we're going to toss it over. We're going to toss it over to CJ, and we're going to hear more about Metropolitan Family Services and how they do parent and family engagement. CJ.
Good afternoon, everyone on the webinar. Happy Thursday. Thank you so very much, Cheryl, for having me as one of the panelists on this webinar. Hello, everyone. This is CJ Pruitt, and I serve as the family advocate, family resource developer with Metropolitan Family Services. And Metropolitan has been the engine of change since 1857. They've been empowering families to heal, to earn, and to thrive. Metropolitan Family Services is part mentor, motivator, and advocate. They empower Chicago area families to reach their greatest potential and to positively impact their communities. At Metropolitan Family Services, we have 7 community centers and numerous sites throughout Chicago, suburban Cook County, and DuPage County, of which most recently DuPage's only comprehensive domestic violence service provider and emergency shelter, whose mission is to transform lives by offering help and hope to those affected by domestic violence, merged with Metropolitan Family Services, creating a seamless continuum of comprehensive wraparound services for domestic violence survivors, which upholds Metropolitan Family Services' mission, which is to provide and mobilize the services needed to strengthen families and communities. And also this year in 2019, Metropolitan Family Services is celebrating 100 years of partnership with the Legal Aid Society. And in this second slide, these are some of the programs and services that Metropolitan Family Services offers to strengthen parents, youth, and families, which promote education, economic stability, emotional wellness, and empowerment, such as the Empowering Families Initiative Home Visiting Program. This program provides expecting and new parents the education and support needed at the time of their child's birth and during the most crucial first 5 years of their child's life. Sessions in the home focus on providing young children experiences that foster healthy growth and development, as well as positive parent-child interactions. In promoting education and economic stability, Metropolitan offers Healthy Families, Parenting Fundamentals, the Girth Family Young Fathers Program, the Older Caregiver Project, and Bridges to Pathways, just to name a few. And in promoting emotional wellness for youth, birth up to age 17, our families are provided the H3 program, which is Healthy Minds, Healthy Children, Healthy Chicago, in which I serve as the family advocate, family resource developer. And with the H3 program, it's first of its kind because in the greater Inglewood community, we're able to offer integrated primary care and mental health services. So the patients of the University of Illinois Hospital and Health Sciences System, which is UIC Health, which is at the Miles Square Health Center in Inglewood, receive mental health and trauma screenings, education, and care coordination as part of their appointments with their doctor. Also, behavioral health counseling, parent education and support services, as well as referrals to community resources and on-site legal help for special education is provided. And as I previously mentioned, the Legal Aid Society provides legal assistance and community education to low-income individuals in the areas of domestic violence, family and elder law, housing, and consumer issues, and victims assistance. And the last program that I want to highlight is our Youth Build program for youth ages 18 to 24. This program helps youth complete high school or obtain their GED. It provides hands-on construction, training, and certifications, and it links the youth to apprenticeships and employment while providing a work stipend. And this program also, they're assigned to a mentor. And finally, at Metropolitan, we have 3 center-based sites. We provide full daycare and learning for children ages 6 weeks of age to 5 years of age. And we also offer supervised visitation and safe exchanges to non-custodial parents that are court-ordered to do so. And lastly, Metropolitan Family Services offers workshops and classes for parents, as well as family events to enhance their supportive and nurturing abilities. So in my final slide, I'm going to focus on the perspective of my being a parent and how agencies and mentors can effectively engage or get buy-in from us parents. So as indicated in my bio, I'm the mother of 6 wonderful children. As you can see, this slide is of my 6 children, ages 16 to 23. But however, prior to 2015, I knew nothing about the social services nonprofit world. And up to this point, I only knew 2 main entities, which was the Chicago Public Library, which I know that there are at least 77 libraries, one for each community within the city of Chicago, and the Chicago Public Schools, which is the 3rd largest public school system in the nation. I believe CPS serves about 680 plus schools. So whatever program offerings were through these 2 entities, such as the museum, Ravinia Park Festival, Lincoln Park Zoo, Brookfield Zoo, the Chicago Children's Choir, in-school choir, and then the Jockey Ballet, martial arts, and the Camp of Dreams was all I knew. Of course, I knew lots of parents, and those parents that were involved either with the Parent Advisory Council or the Bilingual Advisory Council or through the local school council. And the common bond that we all had was we had a child at that school or in an after-school program, such as at the library. What I know from experience is that parents trust other parents and influence other parents' buy-in as well. So case in point is I previously facilitated parent enrichment and education classes, and my first cohort of parents was easy because I sought out those parents that were in attendance at the very first Parent Advisory Council meeting the day that the program director came and visited the meeting and showed us a video of the program. As a parent, I want to see agencies and mentorship programs at resource fairs at my children's school. We just had report card pickup for Chicago Public Schools last week, and there were few mentorship agencies at the report card pickup. I would like to see the mentorship programs and agencies at network events. There are 17 networks within Chicago Public Schools. They branched off and formed 3 new ones since 2018 because of the breakout of the elementary schools versus the high schools. I would also like to see mentorship programs participating in community events. A recent example was Metropolitan Family Services had the opportunity to participate with a Prom with a Purpose, which was hosted by the 7 district police stations. Not only did I represent Metropolitan Family Services, but I also had one of my own daughters participate with selecting a prom dress and participating with that festivity. And also we shared an informational table with 2 of our community partners, which we're located in the City of Chicago Department of Public Health building, where our offices are located. And so as a parent, we need to collaborate and work with each other, because what I saw at that event is that parents gravitated toward all of us, even though we shared a space, but they came to each one of our spaces because we were complementing each other. We weren't competing with each other. We weren't competing with our services. Like Gads Hill Center offers many of the same style programs as Metropolitan Family Services, but we were complementing one another. There was one agency, for example, that has a teen program for expecting mothers from ages 12 to 17, and we don't have a program like that. So I was able to, refer a parent there. So in closing, I would like to encourage every mentor or agency to find a partner within Chicago Public Schools, within Chicago Public Libraries, within Chicago Park Districts, within the 25 police departments, because where you find a restless youth, you're going to find a caring adult who is in need of services and support and a mentor. And we all need help through this journey I call life. And finally, I would like to just sum up my thoughts of what family engagement is for me. And I stated that family engagement is about being involved in your child's life. From the moment they come into your life, is getting to know them, understand them, and knowing what interests them and what they want to be in life. It's knowing who their friends are and their parents of their friends are. It's calling a truth. And we as parents being the bigger person to say, although I don't agree with your decision, I respect your choice. And it's also as parents to say, I love you audibly, so that child can hear that, and giving them encouragement that you believe in them, even if they receive a D on the last report card that you picked up. It's acknowledging their efforts. And then lastly, I believe it's having lots of silly time and fun together, because there are going to be many, many times we have to, as parents, have that tough conversation about life, which is the biggest lesson of us all. Thank you so very much again, Cheryl, and thank you everyone that's on the call.
Awesome. Thank you so much, CJ and Rosa. We appreciate your insight. You guys are boots on the ground, so thank you so much for sharing your perspective with all of us. And we're back at our next Q&A block. Audrey, got any good questions for us?
I have so many good questions, I don't even know where to start. I just want to first say I've done a lot of question moderation on these webinars, and this is the highest volume of excellent questions I've seen. So thank you so much, participants, for being so engaged. We've had a number of questions come in about working with refugee, immigrant, and Latinx communities when mentors and program staff are predominantly white or don't speak the language of the family. So what are some strategies and approaches that programs can take to work with families when there are significant language and cultural barriers?
Rosa, can you help us with that one?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that question. I really appreciate it. I think the first step is just asking questions just like that, being self-aware of what your limitations are and not being afraid to ask those questions and get the support that you need. Oftentimes, families find it very, it's a way to engage. I am Mexican American. I was born in Chicago. My language was English. My family was immigrated from Mexico, and it was important for them that we understood the language, especially in the era that we moved to Chicago. So it was even a struggle for me when I started to build relationships. It was almost assumed because of the way that I looked that I automatically spoke Spanish. And I found that families were very encouraged. If I was allowed myself to be vulnerable, it almost allowed them to be vulnerable and say, I'm struggling with some of these words, or can you help me understand? And then also, again, I'm Mexican American, and Chicago is made up of Latino families from Central America, South America. And so every family that I work with, it's taking the time to understand what their values are, understanding what their culture is as it pertains to their family, and not being intimidated by the language barrier, and really taking a risk to have them help you get your thoughts across, and then, of course, challenging yourself to develop some basic language skills, to be able to say hola and how are you in Spanish goes a long way when working with a family.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rosa. So I have an interesting kind of nuanced question in that I think a lot of times we talk about one-to-one mentoring relationships. And so kind of taking into consideration that some of the mentoring relationships for participants in this webinar might be group mentor settings, what are some different best practices or tactics that we could use to foster relationships when there are multiple families and only one mentor?
Hey, this is Cheryl. I have a couple thoughts on this, and then I'll definitely let CJ and Rosa chime in if they have some responses too. I think that even though it's group mentoring, and we talked a little bit about this earlier, group mentoring, site-based mentoring, school-based mentoring, I feel like each one has its own dynamic, right? But I think the important thing is that even if it is a group setting, is that you're able to pull the group together, whatever that looks like. So if it's one mentor with 5 kids or 2 mentors with 8 kids, I feel it's important to still bring the families and the mentors together. Because the nice thing that can happen in group mentoring dynamics is that you really solidify the group. That a mentor it gets to meet 2 sets of families or 3 sets of families, or different mentors get to meet each other. I feel like it's about building that group, because the stronger the group, the tighter knit the group, the more success that young person is going to have. So I am a big proponent of bringing the entire group together and letting everyone kind of meet each other and really build from there.
Cheryl, I agree 100% with you.
Okay, please.
I'm sorry, CJ. I was just going to reinforce what you were saying, Cheryl. I think that's great. We practice, the majority of the work that we do around mentoring is group mentoring here at Gads Hill Center. For us, that doesn't mean that we lose the ability to make individual relationships. As parents are walking in, we're greeting them by name, we're checking in with them individually. But like Cheryl was saying, it's so critical to try to have activities and opportunities for them to be able to engage, feel comfortable with each other, because that's part of mentoring too. They begin to have peer-to-peer mentoring amongst these parents, and I see them getting support from each other if we can create that opportunity for them to feel safe, welcomed, and included as a group.
And this is CJ. Thank you so much, Rosa. I just wanted to add, as a parent, when one of my children had to receive counseling, I was initially embarrassed. And so I felt uncomfortable with the group initially because it was just overwhelming. It was already, that I was faulting myself for some of the things and some of the behaviors that my child was exhibiting. And I thought maybe I was at fault. And so coming into a group all at once, it was kind of like overwhelming. And so it was big of the mentor to see that, to say, okay, you know what, we need to do a one-on-one with CJ's family, and then we'll bring them back to the group. Because with the group, it then reminded me of being a product of Chicago Public Schools with too many children and only one teacher. And so sometimes the children that's having the most difficult time grasping the material, they're falling through the cracks because they're not getting that one-on-one. And so sometimes if it's going to be a large group, I think that it should then be like 2 mentors for that session, depending on how many family members are participating. Because, you know, like I'm looking at my family. My family is large. It's like 8 people. And sometimes on some days it's 10. And so if I look at that and then there's 2 other large families, that's like 30 participants, you know, at a group. And that can be sometimes overwhelming for families.
That's great insight. Thank you for CJ. I appreciate that, because that makes a lot of sense when we're talking about, you know, how do we make families and parents feel comfortable. So you could easily be overwhelmed. I could totally see that. That's great insight. Thank you for that. Audrey, anything else?
Absolutely. So another question that we have, and Cheryl, you had mentioned kind of early on when you were talking about family engagement strategies, the importance of providing a formal introduction between the mentor and the family. So what are some tips that you have for introducing mentors to families, or specific events or activities that you use? Are there any do's or don'ts that are really important to consider when doing this?
A couple things that I always share when I was running programs, and now when I'm coaching programs, is I always talk about creating kind of a bio for mentors, and then a bio for mentees, and sometimes even families. You know, if it's a large family, then and you can exchange the two, right? And what I would often do is I would send the bios out to the parties. So for mentors, I would send them the youth bio, and I would send the youth the mentor's bio. And it just gives, you know, some high level information about the person, you know, why they want to be involved. If it's a mentor bio, why they want to be involved, you know, where they work, you know, why do they think being a mentor is important, that kind of thing. And then for the young person, you know, what school they attend, what grade they're in, you know, how many people in their family, what do they value, what do they like to do, just some general information. I feel like that's where it begins, because if we think about it, you know, mentoring is kind of a strange thing, right? You're putting 2 people together that have no knowledge of each other. It's like it's no familiarity at all. They're virtual strangers, and we're putting them together and we're saying, okay, go, fly, be successful, but they don't know anything about each other. So as much as we can do as program providers to say, hey, this is what the mentor is all about, and this is what the young person and their family is about, it just makes it a little easier. So when I say a formal introduction, that's what I mean, laying some general information out for each other to kind of get to know one another before you actually put them face to face.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. It looks like we have time for one more question. So the idea of a parent or family committee could be really appealing as a way of engaging parents and then getting even more families involved. So have any of you used this approach before of creating a parent or family committee? And if so, what are some of the best practices that you could provide to our participants to understand kind of how to go about doing this, what types of workshops or activities you could engage parents and families with, and any challenges or successes that you've seen with this type of approach?
So at Gads Hill Center, we integrate parent voice and family voice into all of our different programming, and we have parents that are a part of our formal board. We have a parent policy committee that is also a part, and we also have parents who are part of our parent council within our teen program. We really work on building up their leadership skills and really building up, as you would any curriculum, talking about communication, giving them goals of the group and getting them to understand what the impact will be of them participating in that group. So yes, at Gads Hill, we've had a lot of successes in being able to get our parent voice to be a part of how we design our services and how we deliver those services.
So here at with the H3 program, Healthy Minds, Healthy Children, Healthy Chicago, we have an advisory council in which we engage parents of the community to participate. So we can kind of gauge to see what's happening in the community, because sometimes working in the clinic, we can't always get out. And so we kind of come together and share events and ideas, and we sometimes do have like a potluck celebratory type of event as well. I know we do that with our parents education, parent enrichment class. At the end, we have a celebratory event for the parents, and that is that's giving them validation too, that we're celebrating their success for the end of that 9-week program.
Perfect. Thank you so much to Rosa and CJ. And Audrey for fielding all our questions. Thank you so much. So if you're interested in contacting any of us, our contact information is on the screen. There's Rosa, Director of Mental Health and Youth Services at Gads Hill, CJ at Metropolitan Family Services. She is the Family Resource Developer. And I am Cheryl, Director of Programs and Partnerships at Mentor, Illinois. And also we provided over on the side by the chat box, there is a handout that CJ graciously provided with some general resources that you can peruse at your leisure. And some additional resources. So Mentor scales impact by developing and supporting a national network of affiliates. These affiliates provide leadership, infrastructure necessary to support the expansion of quality mentoring relationships in local communities or statewide. Mentor affiliates also serve as a unique role as a clearinghouse for training, resources, public awareness, and advocacy. We encourage you to find out whether you have an affiliate in your region and can connect with them to learn about local resources and training opportunities. Additionally, we encourage you to register your program with the Mentoring Connector, which is a national database of mentoring programs. The zip code searchable database allows mentors and mentees from across the country to find your program and is connected to LinkedIn, NBA Cares, Mentor.gov, and so many other avenues of free program promotion. And finally, check out the OJJDP National Mentoring Resource Center website for no-cost mentoring resources to help you apply evidence-based mentoring practices to your program. The OJJDP NMRC provides evidence reviews on mentoring models and mentoring for special populations, implementation resources from training manuals to mentor guides that are reviewed by the MMRC Research Board. There's also a blog featuring innovations and best practices from mentoring practitioners and the opportunity to request no-cost training or technical assistance. As a reminder, 1 week after the webinar, all attendees will receive an email with a link to the Collaborative Mentoring Webinar Series webpage, where we will post all the recordings, slides, and additional resources. And don't forget, we want your feedback. At the end of today's webinar, please answer the short survey, just 2-3 minutes, and help us make this series even better. Be sure to visit the Collaborative Mentoring Webinar Series page on the Mentor website for an archive of all past webinars and information about any upcoming webinars. And thank you very much for joining us today. And we are hopeful that you're going to come back next month on May 16th for the next webinar, which is running a strategy-led organization. So we hope you'll come back for that. Thank you so much for your time today, and we hope you have a wonderful day.